Sarah's hands trembled as she fumbled with her phone outside the late-night cafe, the screen blurring through the tears she refused to let fall. She could feel him, 20 feet behind her. The same man who'd been nursing a single coffee for 2 hours while she finished her shift, watching her with eyes that made her skin crawl. The same man who'd followed her to her car 3 nights ago, before she'd driven to a police station instead of home. "Please, I need someone to walk me to my car," she whispered into the phone, her voice cracking as she called her roommate for the 3rd time. Voicemail. Again. The street stretched before her, dark except for a few scattered streetlights, and her beat-up Honda sat 4 blocks away because she'd been running late and couldn't find closer parking. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Closer now. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The cafe had just locked its doors, the owner already walking to his car in the opposite direction. 2 other late-night establishments lined this street, but one was a sketchy bar she'd never dare enter, and the other an upscale restaurant stood behind a red velvet rope and a doorman who looked like he'd eat her alive for daring to approach in her coffee-stained uniform. But it was her only option. Sarah forced her legs to move, walking quickly toward the restaurant's golden light. The footsteps behind her quickened too. "Don't run," she told herself. "If you run, he'll chase." The self-defense article she'd read said to stay in public, make noise, draw attention. But the street was almost empty, just a few couples walking on the other side, too far away to help. She reached the restaurant entrance, where a tall man in an impeccably tailored black suit stood beside the doorman, apparently finishing a conversation. Even in her panic, she noticed him, because you couldn't not notice him. He was probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on movie screens, all sharp jawlines and intense dark eyes. The kind of handsome that felt dangerous, like a blade hidden in silk. "Excuse me," she gasped out, her voice higher than she intended. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's a man following me, and would you mind walking me to my car? It's just 4 blocks. Please." The man's dark eyes shifted from her to a point behind her, and something changed in his expression. Something cold and deadly that made her instinctively step back, even though she'd been the one to approach him. "Which man?" His voice was smooth, controlled, with an undertone of steel that made her shiver. The one in the gray hoodie. He's been following me for 3 blocks, and he was at the cafe watching me all night, and Her voice broke. "I just want to get home safely. Stay here." It wasn't a suggestion. The man moved past her with a predatory grace that reminded her of panthers she'd seen in documentaries, all coiled power and lethal intent. "Wait, you don't have to—" But he was already walking toward the man in the gray hoodie. Sarah watched, frozen, as the stranger approached her stalker. She couldn't hear what he said, but she saw the effect. The man in the hoodie went pale, actually stumbled backward, and then turned and ran. Actually ran, like the devil himself was on his heels. The stranger watched him go, pulled out his phone, spoke a few quiet words she couldn't hear, then returned to her. His expression had smoothed back into something almost pleasant, though his eyes still held that dangerous edge. "He won't bother you again," he said simply. "What? What did you say to him?" A slight smile touched his lips, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I explained the consequences of his choices. Where's your car?" Thank you. You don't have to walk me. I'm sure he's gone now. I'll walk you to your car." Again, not a suggestion. Sarah found herself nodding, her adrenaline-flooded brain not quite processing the strangeness of the situation. This man had just terrified her stalker with a few words, looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, and was now falling into step beside her as she started toward the parking lot. "I'm Dante," he said as they walked. "Dante Moretti." Sarah Chen." She hugged her purse against her chest. "Thank you for helping me. I was really scared." "You should have been. Men like that are dangerous." He glanced at her, and there was something assessing in his gaze. "You work at the cafe?" "Yeah, night shift. It's usually safe, the neighborhood's decent, but he started showing up a week ago and just staring. The owner kicked him out twice, but he'd come back or wait outside. She was babbling now, the fear draining out of her, leaving space for nervous energy. I reported it to the police, but they said until he actually did something. Until he did something, they couldn't help. Dante's voice had gone cold again. Yes, that's often how it works. They walked in silence for half a block. Sarah kept stealing glances at him, trying to figure out what kind of man could scare off a stalker with just words, who dressed like that and stood outside expensive restaurants on a Tuesday night, who moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently. "What do you do?" she asked, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, that's probably rude to ask. I own businesses." He said it casually, but there was weight behind the words. "Security, among other things." They turned down the darker street where her car waited, and Sarah's nerves returned. What if the stalker came back? What if he had friends? As if reading her thoughts, Dante said, "He won't return. I promise you that." "How can you know?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Sarah felt pinned by that gaze. "Because I told him exactly what would happen if he came near you again. And I have a reputation for keeping my promises." Something in his tone made her believe him absolutely. They reached her car, a dented 2008 Honda Civic that looked even more pathetic next to Dante's obvious wealth and polish. "This is me," she said, pulling out her keys with shaking hands. She pressed the unlock button 3 times before she finally got the door open. "Thank you again, really. I don't know what I would have done if... Sarah." He said her name like he was tasting it. "Does anyone know your schedule at the cafe?" She frowned. "My co-workers, my roommate. Why?" "The man who was following you knew exactly when you worked and where you'd be. That suggests either he's been watching you for longer than a week, or someone told him." Ice flooded her veins. I haven't thought about that." "Do you have somewhere else you can stay? Family? Friends?" "My parents are in California. I moved here for school, but then stayed for work. I have my roommate, but she's hardly ever home because of her boyfriend." Sarah stopped, hearing how pathetic she sounded. "I'll be fine. I'll change my shifts." Dante pulled a business card from his inside jacket pocket. It was heavy cardstock, matte black with silver lettering. Just a name and phone number. "If he comes back, if anyone bothers you, call me immediately." "I can't. I mean, you've already done so much. Sarah." That tone again, the one that expected obedience. "Take the card." She took it, her fingers brushing his. His hands were warm, strong, with scarred knuckles that told stories she probably didn't want to know. "Thank you," she whispered. He watched her get in her car, waited until she locked the doors, and then nodded once before walking back the way they'd come. Sarah sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, her heart still racing, but for different reasons now. Who was Dante Moretti? And why did she have the feeling she'd just stepped into something far more complicated than a simple Good Samaritan helping a scared woman? She drove home, checking her rearview mirror every few seconds, but no one followed her. Her apartment was a modest 1-bedroom in a building that had seen better days, but it was hers, and it was safe, and right now that was all she needed. The next morning, Sarah woke to 17 missed calls from her manager at the cafe. "Sarah." "Thank God," Marcus gasped when she called back. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" "That guy, the one who was watching you, they found him this morning. He's in the hospital. Someone beat him so badly he can barely talk. The police are here asking questions about who had problems with him." Sarah's blood went cold. Is he going to be okay? Physically? Eventually. But Sarah, he told the police he's leaving town, moving back to his parents' place in Ohio. Said he'd learned his lesson about bothering people. The cops seem to think it's connected to you, that maybe you had a boyfriend or brother who took care of it. She thought of Dante's scarred knuckles, his cold promise that the stalker wouldn't be back. "I don't have a boyfriend," she said slowly. "Or a brother." Well, someone sure as hell sent a message. The police want to talk to you. The next few hours were a blur of police interviews where Sarah told a carefully edited version of the truth. Yes, a man had helped her last night. No, she didn't know him well. Yes, he'd scared off her stalker, but she hadn't seen any violence. No, she didn't know how to contact him beyond a business card he'd given her. The detective, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, had studied the card Dante had given her. "Dante Moretti," she'd said slowly. "And he just happened to be there when you needed help?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" The detective had given her a long look. "Ms. Chen, do you know who Dante Moretti is?" "He said he owns businesses, security companies, I think. That's one way to put it." The detective slid the card back across the table. "My advice? Don't call this number. Don't contact him again. What happened to your stalker, as satisfying as it might feel, isn't how justice works in this city. I don't understand." "Yes, you do. You're a smart woman. You know there are certain people in this city who operate outside the law. People with enough power and money that they think they can solve problems with violence. Dante Moretti is one of those people." Sarah had gone home with her head spinning. She'd Googled Dante Moretti and found very little. A few society page photos from charity events, mentions of his name connected to various businesses and real estate holdings, and one news article from 5 years ago about an FBI investigation that had gone nowhere. But the comment sections, the Reddit threads, the whispered implications, they all painted the same picture. Dante Moretti was Mafia. Not Mafia adjacent, not Mafia connected. The actual head of one of the most powerful crime families in the city. And she'd asked him to walk her to her car. Sarah tried to forget about it, tried to go back to her normal life. She picked up extra shifts at the cafe, started saving for better locks on her apartment door, and absolutely did not think about the way Dante had looked at her, or the protective fury in his eyes when he'd gone after her stalker. She did not think about how safe she'd felt walking beside him despite knowing, on some instinctive level, that he was dangerous. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Sarah started to relax, started to believe it had just been a strange, terrifying blip in her otherwise ordinary existence. Then Dante walked into the cafe. It was a Thursday afternoon, the quiet period between the lunch rush and the evening crowd. Sarah was wiping down tables when the door opened and he walked in, looking just as devastating in casual clothes, dark jeans, and a gray Henley that did nothing to hide the power in his shoulders, as he had in that suit. Their eyes met across the cafe, and Sarah felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. "Hi," she managed, clutching the rag she'd been using. "Can I get you something?" "Coffee, black." He chose a table by the window, the same table her stalker had favored, and Sarah wondered if that was deliberate. "And a few minutes of your time, when you have a break." She brought him his coffee with shaking hands, hyper-aware of the curious glances from the other 2 customers, and from Marcus, who was watching from behind the counter with undisguised interest. "I'm sorry," Dante said when she set the cup down. "I should have stayed away." "Why didn't you?" She slid into the chair across from him before she could think better of it. "Because I've spent 3 weeks trying to forget about you, and I can't." He said it flatly, like he was admitting a weakness. "Because I check in with the patrol I have on this street 3 times a day to make sure you're safe. Because I had someone watch your apartment building to ensure no one else decided to bother you. Because you're in my head, Sarah, and I don't know what to do about it." Sarah stared at him. "You've had people watching me?" "For your protection. That's stalking. That's literally what we're trying to prevent." "It's different." "How?" His jaw tightened. "Because I would die before I let anything happen to you. Because every man I have watching you knows that if they so much as make you uncomfortable, they answer to me. Because I'm not watching you to frighten you, but to keep you safe. You don't even know me." "I know enough." He leaned forward, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I know you work 2 jobs to pay for your apartment, because you're too proud to ask your parents for money. I know you volunteer at the library on Sundays reading to children. I know you take the long way home from night shifts because the direct route goes through a neighborhood that makes you nervous. I know you eat lunch alone most days, reading paperback romance novels that you buy secondhand because they're cheaper. You do have people stalking me, but her voice came out breathless instead of angry. I have people keeping you alive. There's a difference. The man who followed you? He was paid to watch you. Someone wanted to know your patterns, your schedule, where you lived. We got that information from him before we encouraged him to leave town. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What? Who would pay someone to watch me? That's what I'm trying to find out. Dante's voice went hard. You don't have enemies, Sarah. You're not involved in anything that would draw this kind of attention, which means either it's random, which I don't believe, or it's connected to someone you know. This is insane. I'm nobody. I serve coffee and take online classes and live a completely boring life. Then someone thinks you're important, or someone wants to use you to get to someone else. He studied her face. Has anyone new come into your life recently? Asked unusual questions? Shown too much interest? Sarah's mind raced through her limited social interactions. Her roommate's boyfriend, who she'd met twice? The regular customers at the cafe? The study group from her online program she'd never actually met in person? I don't think so, she said slowly, but I wouldn't necessarily notice if someone was being weird. I'm not exactly used to people paying attention to me. Something flickered in Dante's expression. Then you haven't been around the right people. The air between them felt charged suddenly, heavy with something that made Sarah's skin prickle with awareness. Why are you really here? She asked. Is it just to warn me? No. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, but not quite touching. I'm here because I'm trying to decide if I'm selfish enough to pull you into my world, or strong enough to walk away and keep you safe from a distance. What if I want to be pulled in? The words were out before Sarah could stop them, reckless and bold and completely unlike her usual careful self. But something about Dante made her want to be brave, want to step off the edge of her safe, boring life into whatever dangerous thing this was. You don't know what you're saying. Then tell me. Explain it to me. Stop protecting me from information and let me make my own choices. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. Then he pulled back, reaching into his pocket for his wallet. He left $200 bills on the table for a $4 coffee. Saturday night, he said. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something nice. And Sarah? If you're smart, you'll tell me no right now. You'll ask me to leave and never come back. Because once you step into my world, there's no stepping out again. He stood, and Sarah found herself standing too, her heart pounding. Where are we going? To a place where you'll see exactly who I am, where you'll understand what being with me means. He touched her chin gently, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. And then you can decide if you're brave enough or crazy enough to want this anyway. He left, and Sarah sank back into her chair, staring at the money on the table. Marcus appeared at her elbow immediately. Girl, who the hell was that? Trouble, Sarah whispered. Really, really dangerous trouble. The hot kind of trouble? She thought about Dante's eyes, his scarred knuckles, the way he'd promised her safety, with a tone that suggested he'd burn down the city to keep that promise. The worst kind. Saturday arrived too quickly, and not quickly enough. Sarah changed outfits 4 times, finally settling on a simple black dress that she'd bought for a cousin's wedding 2 years ago. It was the nicest thing she owned, though she suspected it wouldn't compare to wherever Dante was taking her. At exactly 7, her phone buzzed. He's here, read the text from an unknown number. Sarah grabbed her clutch and headed downstairs, her heels clicking against the worn linoleum. A sleek black car waited at the curb, and Dante stood beside it in another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal gray. His eyes traveled over her slowly, appreciatively, and Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. You're beautiful, he said simply, opening the car door for her. The interior was all leather and luxury. Such a far cry from her beaten Honda that Sarah almost laughed. Dante slid in beside her, and the driver pulled away from the curb smoothly. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked. "The Belmore Hotel. There's a private event tonight." The Belmore was the most exclusive hotel in the city, the kind of place Sarah had only seen in magazines. What kind of event? A gathering of certain business associates, people I work with, people I need to keep relationships with. He turned to face her fully. People who will see you with me and understand what that means. What does it mean? It means you're under my protection. It means anyone who touches you answers to me. It means you're mine, if you choose to be. Sarah's breath caught. That's very possessive. I am possessive. I'm also violent, morally gray, and involved in businesses that would make you uncomfortable if you knew the details. I've hurt people, Sarah. I've done things that keep me up at night. I'm giving you this glimpse so you can run while you still can. She studied his profile in the dim light of the car. What if I don't want to run? Then you're either braver or more foolish than I thought. The Belmore's entrance was all glass and gold, with valets and doormen and a red carpet that led to a ballroom on the second floor. Dante's hand settled on the small of Sarah's back as they entered, a possessive gesture that sent shivers up her spine. The ballroom was stunning, filled with people who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. Sarah felt desperately out of place in her bargain dress and last season's shoes. But then Dante leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. "You're the most beautiful woman here. Don't doubt that for a second." Heads turned as they moved through the crowd. Sarah heard whispers, saw curious and calculating looks. Dante introduced her to men with Italian names and hard eyes, women dripping in diamonds who assessed her like competition. "Who is she?" one woman asked Dante directly, her tone just shy of rude. "Someone important to me." Dante's arm tightened around Sarah's waist. "Someone who is to be treated with the respect due to my household." The woman's eyes widened slightly and she nodded, backing away. "What did you just do?" Sarah whispered. "I claimed you publicly. In my world, that means something." "It means you're protected, but it also means you're a target. Anyone who wants to hurt me might try to get to you. That's terrifying." "Yes." He guided her to a quieter corner, away from the crowd. "So, now you know. This is my life, Sarah. Danger and luxury and violence wrapped up in expensive suits. I can give you anything you want, safety, money, protection. But I can't give you normal. I can't give you boring. I can't promise you won't be scared sometimes." Sarah looked up at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd crashed into her life 3 weeks ago. She thought about her boring existence, her safe routine, her careful life that had still left her vulnerable to a stalker because safety was an illusion anyway. "What can you promise me?" Dante's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I can promise that I will never let anyone hurt you. I can promise that you'll be cherished, protected, valued. I can promise that I'll be honest with you, even when the truth is ugly. And I can promise that once you're mine, I'll never let you go." That should scare me more than it does. Probably. His lips curved in a slight smile. "But you're not scared, are you? You're intrigued. You're curious. You're wondering what it would feel like to let yourself fall." He was right, and they both knew it. Sarah had spent her whole life being careful, being safe, being small. And where had it gotten her? Still vulnerable, still alone, still longing for something more. "If I say yes to this," she said slowly, "if I say yes to you, what does that mean practically? Do I quit my job? Move into some mansion? Become some kept woman who doesn't exist outside of your world? No. You keep your life, your job, if you want it, your friends, your independence. But you let me protect you. You let me into your life. You trust me to keep you safe." His eyes burned into hers, And you accept that I'm going to be possessive, jealous, and probably overbearing about your safety. What about you? What do I get from you besides protection? Everything I am, everything I have, every part of me that's capable of love, which I'll warn you isn't much, but what exists is yours. His voice dropped lower. And I'll worship you, Sarah. I'll make you feel like the center of my universe, because that's what you'll be. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. This was crazy. This was reckless. This was exactly the kind of thing sensible people didn't do. She reached up and pulled his face down to hers, kissing him with all the pent-up fear and longing and desperate bravery she'd been holding inside. Dante made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, the kiss turning deeper, hungrier. His hand tangled in her hair, and Sarah felt like she was falling, drowning, flying all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" he asked, his voice rough. "It's a yes to trying, to seeing where this goes, to being brave enough to want something extraordinary even if it's dangerous. I'll take it." He kissed her again, softer this time. "And Sarah, I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Dante was true to his word. He didn't try to change her life, but he definitely enhanced it. Security appeared at her apartment building, discreet but present. A new car appeared in her parking spot one morning, much newer and safer than her old Honda, with a note that said simply, "Because I need to know you're protected." He took her to dinners at restaurants she'd only read about, introduced her to a world of luxury she'd never imagined. But he also showed up at the cafe during her shifts with coffee for her coworkers, and patience to wait until she was free. He asked about her classes, remembered details about her life, treated her like she mattered. And slowly, Sarah began to understand what it meant to be cherished by someone like Dante Moretti. But she also began to understand the danger. It started small, a man watching her apartment from across the street. Dante's security removed him. Then came anonymous letters sent to the cafe, cryptic warnings about getting too close to dangerous men. Dante traced them back to a rival family, dealt with them in ways Sarah suspected she didn't want to know about. "This isn't going to stop, is it?" she asked him one night as they sat on her couch, her head resting on his shoulder. "No," he admitted. "I have enemies, and now that they know you're important to me, you're a target. I can protect you, but I can't make the danger disappear entirely. Do you ever regret it? Bringing me into this?" Dante turned to look at her, his dark eyes serious. "Every day I regret the danger I've put you in. And every day I'm too selfish to let you go." "Good," Sarah said, "because I'm too stubborn to leave anyway." 3 months into their relationship, everything changed. Sarah was leaving her evening class at the community center when 2 men appeared beside her car. They weren't Dante's security. She'd learned to recognize his people. These men had a different energy, predatory and cold. "Ms. Chen," one of them said, "please come with us." "I don't think so." Sarah backed toward the building entrance, her hand diving into her purse for her phone. The second man moved fast, grabbing her arm. "Mr. Moretti isn't the only powerful man in this city. Our employer would like a word." Terror flooded through Sarah, but so did something else. Fury. She was tired of being treated like a pawn, like an object to be moved around in other people's games. "Let go of me," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "Whatever you think you're accomplishing, you're making a massive mistake." "The only mistake was Moretti thinking he could claim you without consequences," the first man said. They started pulling her toward a waiting car, and Sarah opened her mouth to scream. Then the world exploded into violence. Dante appeared like an avenging angel, moving with lethal grace. He broke the first man's grip on Sarah with brutal efficiency, then drove his fist into the second man's face with a sickening crunch. Both men went down, hard. More of Dante's people materialized from the shadows, securing the 2 men. Dante turned to Sarah, his hands immediately checking her for injuries, his eyes wild with fury and fear. "Are you hurt?" Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay," Sarah managed, though she was shaking. "Dante, I'm okay." He pulled her against his chest, his arms like steel bands around her. She could feel his heart racing, could feel the barely controlled violence still thrumming through him. "Marco," he barked at one of his men, "find out who sent them. I want names by morning." "Already on it, boss." Dante pulled back, framing Sarah's face with his hands. "This is my fault. I should have had more security on you. I should have—" "Stop!" Sarah covered his hands with hers. "You can't protect me from everything. And I knew the risks. That doesn't make it acceptable." His voice was rough. "Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer." She nodded, still trying to stop shaking. "Marry me." Sarah blinked. "What?" "Marry me. Not someday, not eventually. This weekend. In my world, a girlfriend can be threatened, can be used as leverage. But a wife is family. Anyone who touches you would be declaring war on my entire organization. You'd have protection beyond just me. You'd have the weight of every alliance, every business relationship I've built. You'd be untouchable." "That's possibly the least romantic proposal in the history of proposals," Sarah said, her voice shaking between laughter and tears. "I'm not a romantic man," Dante said, "but I am a man who loves you beyond reason, beyond sense. I am a man who will burn down this entire city before I let anyone take you from me. So marry me, Sarah. Be my wife. Let me protect you the only way I know how." Sarah looked into his eyes. This dangerous, beautiful, complicated man who'd crashed into her life 4 months ago. She thought about the girl she'd been then, scared, small, living a half-life, because it felt safer than risking anything real. She wasn't that girl anymore. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Dante kissed her then, deep and desperate, a kiss that tasted like promises and possession and forever. They married 3 days later in a private ceremony at Dante's estate, surrounded by his family and closest associates. Sarah wore a dress that probably cost more than her yearly salary, and Dante looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "I, Dante Alessandro Moretti, take you, Sarah Elizabeth Chen, to be my wife," he said when the time came for vows. "I promise to protect you with my life, to cherish you with everything I am, and to love you beyond reason or wisdom. You are my heart, my home, my salvation. From this day forward, you are mine, and I am yours." Sarah's own vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. "I take you as you are, dangerous, protective, impossibly stubborn. I promise to stand beside you, to trust your protection while keeping my own strength. I promise to love all of you, even the parts the world finds frightening. You saved me, but more than that, you saw me. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you feel as cherished as you make me feel." When Dante slid the ring on her finger, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, Sarah felt the weight of it like an anchor and a promise all at once. The reception was a mixture of elegance and barely concealed danger, with toasts given by men who had blood on their hands, and women who knew exactly what world they inhabited. But through it all, Dante never left her side, his hand always on her, his eyes constantly checking to ensure she was safe, happy, comfortable. "Regrets yet?" he murmured in her ear as they danced their first dance as husband and wife. "Not even one," Sarah said truthfully, "though I do have a question." "Anything?" "The men who grabbed me, what happened to them?" Dante's expression darkened. "They gave us the name of who sent them. A rival looking to destabilize my territory by proving I couldn't protect what was mine. He's been dealt with, permanently." Sarah probably should have been horrified. Instead, she felt a savage satisfaction. "Good. You're becoming dangerous yourself, Mrs. Moretti." "I learned from the best, Mr. Moretti." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face, and Sarah felt her heart turn over in her chest. This was her life now, beautiful and terrifying, luxurious and dangerous, but undeniably hers. 6 months into their marriage, Sarah walked into Dante's home office, their home office now, with news that would change everything. He looked up from his desk immediately, attuned to her in a way that still made her breath catch. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need to tell you something." Dante was around the desk in seconds, his hands on her arms. "Sarah, you're scaring me." "I'm pregnant." He froze, his eyes going wide. We're having a baby. I found out this morning. I know we hadn't talked about children yet, and with your world, maybe this isn't the right time." Dante kissed her, cutting off her nervous rambling. When he pulled back, there were actual tears in his eyes. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "A child. Our child. You're not upset?" "Upset?" He let out a shocked laugh. "Sarah, I've spent my entire life surrounded by darkness. You brought light into it, and now you're giving me a family? You're giving me a future beyond just survival and territory and endless violence? I'm not upset. I'm terrified and thrilled, and so grateful I can barely breathe." Sarah felt her own tears start. "We're going to have to be so careful. The security, the danger. Will be managed. We'll expand security, limit your exposure, build a fortress if we have to." "But Sarah?" He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "This child will be protected by every resource I have, every alliance I've built, every man loyal to me. And they'll grow up knowing they're loved beyond measure by both of us, even though their father is a dangerous crime lord. Especially because of that. Because I'll teach them to be strong and smart and careful, and their mother will teach them to be brave and kind and to see the good in people." He pulled her close. "We're going to do this together. Build something better than what either of us came from." Sarah wrapped her arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. 6 months ago, she'd been a scared woman asking a stranger for help. Now she was Sarah Moretti, wife to one of the most powerful men in the city, carrying his child, and somehow feeling safer than she ever had in her careful, boring old life. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more," Dante replied. "And I promise you, Sarah, I'll spend every day making sure you and our child have everything you need. Safety, love, a future. Everything." And looking up into his eyes, seeing the fierce love and determination there, Sarah believed him completely. Because Dante Moretti might be dangerous to everyone else, but to her, he was everything. Her protector, her partner, her home. And she wouldn't change a single dangerous, beautiful moment of the life they'd built together. 3 years later, Sarah stood in the garden of their estate, watching as Dante chased their daughter Isabella through the flowers. The little girl's laughter rang out bright and clear, and Dante's face held an expression of pure joy that few people ever got to see. "Got you!" He scooped Isabella up, spinning her around as she shrieked with delight. "Again, Papa! Again!" Sarah smiled, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. Their second child, a son this time. Against all odds, they'd built something beautiful out of danger and darkness. A family, a future, a love that had grown from a desperate plea on a dark street into something that would last forever. Dante caught her eye over Isabella's head and mouthed, "I love you." Sarah mouthed it back, her heart full to bursting. This was her life. Dangerous, yes. Complicated, absolutely. But hers in every way that mattered, and she wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. But Sarah had no idea that the shadows of Dante's past were about to crash into their perfect present with devastating force. It started with a phone call at 3 a.m. Sarah woke to find Dante's side of the bed empty, heard his voice low and urgent from downstairs. By the time she made it to his office, still in her nightgown, with Isabella asleep upstairs, Dante's face had gone pale in a way she'd never seen before. "What's happened?" she asked, her hand instinctively going to her pregnant belly. Dante looked up, and the fear in his eyes made her blood run cold. "My brother, Vincent, he's back." Sarah sank into the nearest chair. She knew about Vincent, the older brother who'd disappeared 8 years ago after trying to overthrow Dante's leadership, the brother everyone assumed was dead. Dante had told her the story one night, his voice hollow, explaining how he'd been forced to choose between his family and his life. Back from where? Prison. Federal. He made a deal, testified against some of our rivals in exchange for a reduced sentence. And now he's out. And Sarah? Dante's voice cracked. He's claiming rights to everything. The business, the territory, the family leadership. And he's threatening anyone who stands with me. He can't just, you've built all of this. You've kept everyone safe, kept the peace. In our world, blood matters more than accomplishments. He's the eldest. By traditional rules, the position should have been his. Dante came around the desk, kneeling in front of her. "Sarah, I need you to take Isabella and leave. Go somewhere safe. I have a house in Vancouver, completely off the books." "Absolutely not." Sarah's voice was steel. "We're not running. We're not leaving you to face this alone." "You don't understand. Vincent he's not stable. He blames me for everything that went wrong in his life. And now that he knows about you, about Isabella, about the baby..." Dante's hands were shaking as they gripped hers. "He'll use you to hurt me. Then we fight back. Together." Sarah cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You told me, when we married, that I was family, that I had the protection of your entire organization. Well, that goes both ways. I'm not some helpless woman anymore, Dante. I'm your wife. I'm a Moretti. And I'm not abandoning you when you need me most." Before Dante could respond, his phone rang again. He answered, listened, and his face went even paler. "We'll be right there." "What now?" Vincent just walked into Lombardi's restaurant, the place where all the families meet on the neutral ground. Dante stood, pulling Sarah up with him. "He's called a council meeting, every major family head in the city. He's forcing a formal challenge to my leadership. What happens at a council meeting? They vote. They hear both sides and decide who has the legitimate claim." Dante's jaw was tight. "And if Vincent wins, everything I've built falls apart. The alliances, the peace, the protections. It all goes back to the way things were before, violent, chaotic, unstable. Then we make sure he doesn't win." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Get dressed. We're going together." "Sarah, you can't. It's not safe." "Exactly why I'm coming. If Vincent wants to threaten your family, he can look me in the eye while he does it." 40 minutes later, Sarah walked into Lombardi's on Dante's arm, wearing a black dress that accommodated her pregnancy and her grandmother's pearls. She'd left Isabella with Dante's most trusted security and his Aunt Maria, who'd arrived with a shotgun and a grim promise that no one would touch the child while she breathed. The restaurant had been cleared of regular customers. Instead, it was filled with men and women Sarah had met at various events, the heads of the city's most powerful families, their advisors, their enforcers. The air was thick with tension and expensive cologne. And at the head table sat Vincent Moretti. He looked like a harder, crueler version of Dante. Same dark eyes, but where Dante's held warmth when he looked at her, Vincent's were cold and calculating. He was thinner, with the wiry build of someone who'd spent years in prison staying sharp and dangerous. "Little brother," Vincent said, his voice carrying across the room. "And you brought your wife. How touching." Dante's hand tightened on Sarah's back. "Vincent, this meeting is unnecessary. I've held the leadership for 8 years. I've maintained peace, grown the businesses, kept everyone prosperous. With my legacy, using what I built. Vincent stood, his eyes sweeping the room. My father gave me the leadership. I was his heir. And then my brother, so eager for power, orchestrated my downfall. Had me arrested, testified against me himself. That's a lie, Dante said coldly. You were arrested because you started a war that got 12 of our people killed, including our cousin Michael. You were reckless, violent, and out of control. And when the feds came, you tried to flip on everyone to save yourself. I stopped you. You betrayed me. Blood betrayed blood. Vincent's voice rose. And now you stand here with your pregnant wife, playing at being a family man. Pretending you're not the same cold-blooded killer who put his own brother in a cell for 8 years. Sarah felt the room shift, heard the murmurs. Vincent was good at this, at twisting the narrative, at playing the victim. She stepped forward before Dante could stop her. You want to talk about family? Her voice rang out clear and strong. Let's talk about what Dante's done for the families in this room. The Russos. Dante mediated your territory dispute with the Catalanos and prevented a bloodbath. The De Lucas. When your warehouses were hit by that rival gang, Dante's resources helped you rebuild, and his intelligence network helped you strike back. The Castellanos. Dante personally negotiated your deal with the Colombian suppliers and increased your profit margins by 40%. She turned slowly, making eye contact with each family head. Dante didn't just maintain what he inherited, he grew it. He made all of you richer, safer, more powerful. And he did it while minimizing violence, while keeping the authorities at bay, while building something sustainable instead of just grabbing for short-term gains. Pretty speech, Vincent sneered. Did he write it for you, or are you just a good little wife parroting what you're told? Sarah smiled, and there was nothing soft about it. No, Vincent. I'm a woman who's seen both sides of this world. I've seen what happens when dangerous men have no control, no honor. I was stalked, terrorized by someone your brother dealt with to protect me. And then I've seen what happens when a man like Dante has power, stability, prosperity, peace. So ask yourself, everyone in this room, who do you want leading? Someone who's been gone for 8 years, whose first act back is to threaten families and sow discord, or someone who's proven himself every single day for nearly a decade? The silence was deafening. Then Carmine Russo, the oldest of the family heads, stood up. The girl speaks truth. Dante, you've been good for business, good for all of us. He looked at Vincent. I'm sorry for what happened to you, but that doesn't mean you're owed the leadership now. I'm owed what's mine by blood, Vincent snarled. Blood isn't everything, another voice called out. Sarah recognized Angela Catalano, one of the few women who headed a family. Competence matters, results matter, and Dante's delivered both. Vincent's face twisted with rage. Fine, you want to reject tradition? Then we do this the old way. A challenge. Dante, you and me, we settle this permanently. The room erupted in voices. Sarah's heart seized with fear. She knew what the old way meant. A fight to the death, or at least to submission. Sanctioned, witnessed, binding. No, she said, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos. Dante's face had gone hard as stone. You want a challenge, Vincent? You want to put this to rest permanently? Fine. Name your terms. Stop it, Sarah grabbed Dante's arm. Don't do this. There has to be another way. There isn't. Dante's voice was gentle as he looked at her, even as his eyes promised violence. He won't stop, Sarah. He'll keep pushing, keep threatening, keep trying to undermine everything until one of us is dead anyway. At least this way, it's on our terms. Vincent smiled, a horrible, twisted thing. Tomorrow night. The warehouse district. Traditional rules. No weapons, no help. Fight until one of us can't continue. Winner takes leadership. Loser leaves the city permanently. If they can. Agreed, Dante said. No, Sarah's voice cracked. You can't. What about Isabella? What about the baby? What about... Dante pulled her close, speaking low into her ear. I won't lose. I promise you, Sarah, I won't lose. But he's right about one thing. This has to end. And I'd rather face him in a fight than wait for him to come after you or our children when we're vulnerable. Sarah wanted to scream, to argue, to demand they find another solution. But she could see in Dante's eyes that his mind was made up. And worse, she could see that he was right. Vincent wouldn't stop. This was the only way to end it. The next 24 hours were torture. Sarah barely slept, watching Dante prepare with his men, going over strategy and backup plans. She held Isabella extra tight, read her extra stories, trying to memorize every laugh and smile in case. No, she wouldn't think like that. Dante would win. He had to. The warehouse where the challenge would take place was enormous and empty, with concrete floors and high ceilings. Chairs had been arranged in a rough circle, and every major family had sent representatives to witness. This was history in the making. A leadership challenge hadn't happened in over 30 years. Sarah stood at the edge of the circle, Dante's Aunt Maria beside her, both women pale and tense. Dante had wanted her to stay home, but she'd refused. If something happened, she would be there. She wouldn't let him face this alone. Vincent arrived with a small entourage, stripped down to jeans and a t-shirt. He was grinning, bouncing on his toes like a boxer before a match. Dante was calm by contrast, his face expressionless as he removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Carmine Russo stepped into the center of the circle. Traditional rules, no weapons, no outside interference. Fight continues until one party submits or cannot continue. All families here witness that this is sanctioned and binding. Winner takes uncontested leadership. Loser leaves and does not return. Both brothers nodded. Then begin. They circled each other slowly. Vincent struck first, fast and vicious, but Dante blocked and countered with brutal efficiency. They traded blows, and Sarah realized with sick fear that Vincent was good. Prison had made him harder, faster, more desperate. Blood flew. Dante's lips split. Vincent's eye swelled. They grappled, broke apart, came together again with bone-crunching impact. The crowd was silent except for gasps and murmurs. Vincent got Dante on the ground, raining down punches. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. But then Dante twisted, reversed their positions, and suddenly, he was the one landing devastating hits. "Stay down," Dante growled. "Surrender, Vincent. This doesn't have to end badly." "Go to hell!" Vincent spat blood and lunged again. The fight went on, brutal and exhausting. Both men were bleeding, gasping, but neither would give up. Sarah watched in horror as the brother she'd never met tried to kill the man she loved. Then Vincent made a mistake. He overextended on a punch, left himself open, and Dante moved with lethal precision. 3 strikes, ribs, solar plexus, jaw, and Vincent went down hard. Dante stood over him, chest heaving. "Submit! It's over!" Vincent tried to get up and collapsed, tried again, failed. "I submit!" He finally gasped out. "You win." Carmine stepped forward, witnessed and acknowledged. Dante Moretti retains leadership by right of challenge. Vincent Moretti is bound to leave the city within 24 hours and not return. It was done. Sarah ran to Dante, not caring about the blood or the watching crowd. She threw her arms around him, and he held her tight despite the pain he must be feeling. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "It's really over." They took him to a doctor, one on the family payroll who patched him up without asking questions. Cracked ribs, bruised everything, but nothing permanently damaged. Sarah stayed by his side through all of it, holding his hand, trying not to cry with relief. 2 days later, Vincent left the city. Dante's people confirmed he got on a plane to Miami, where he had distant cousins and no power base. It was truly over. That night, Sarah lay beside Dante in their bed, careful not to jostle his injuries. Isabella was asleep down the hall, safe and oblivious to how close they'd come to losing everything. "I'm sorry," Dante said quietly. "I'm sorry I put you through that. Put our family through that. Don't apologize for surviving, for protecting us." Sarah touched his face gently. "You did what you had to do. I could have lost. I could have left you alone with 2 children and no protection. But you didn't. You won. And now we can finally move forward without that shadow hanging over us." She kissed him softly. "We're safe. Isabella's safe. Our son will be born into a stable world because of what you did." Dante pulled her as close as his injuries would allow. "I love you. More than power. More than territory. More than any of this. You and our children. You're everything." "I know," Sarah whispered. "I've always known." 4 months later, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Marco, after Dante's father. Isabella was enchanted with her baby brother, constantly wanting to hold him and sing to him. Their home was filled with the chaos and joy of young children, so different from the violence and darkness that had nearly consumed them. Dante was a devoted father, somehow managing to balance the demands of his position with being present for every milestone, every bedtime story, every precious moment of their children's lives. And Sarah had found her place in this world. She wasn't just Dante's wife anymore. She'd earned respect from the other families, had become an advisor and mediator in her own right. The woman who'd once been too scared to walk to her car alone was now someone people came to for wisdom and protection. One evening, as they watched Isabella and Marco play in the garden while the sun set, Dante took Sarah's hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "That night you asked me to walk you to your car? Letting me into your life?" Sarah thought about the scared woman she'd been, about the safe, small life she'd been living. Then she looked at her children, at the home they'd built, at the man beside her who'd shown her what it meant to be truly loved and protected. "Not for a single second," she said. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed. A purpose, a family, a life worth fighting for. Even with all the danger, all the complications, especially because of them. Because they taught me I was stronger than I ever believed possible." She squeezed his hand. "You saved me that night, Dante. But more than that, you saw me. The real me, underneath all the fear. And you loved that person enough to give her the space to become who she was always meant to be." Dante kissed her then, deep and sweet, with all the love and gratitude and wonder that still filled him when he looked at her. "Thank you," he whispered against her lips, "for being brave enough to trust me, for giving me a family, for loving me despite everything I am. Because of everything you are," Sarah corrected. "Every dangerous, protective, impossibly devoted part of you." And as the sun set over their estate, painting everything in gold, Sarah Moretti realized that sometimes the best love stories aren't the safe ones. Sometimes they're the ones that start with fear and end with a love so fierce it could withstand anything. Sometimes they're the ones where a scared woman asks a dangerous stranger for help, and that stranger turns out to be exactly what she needed all along: her protector, her partner, her home. And she wouldn't change a single moment of their beautiful, dangerous, perfect life together.